Good afternoon from Copenhagen. Welcome to the webinar, Energy Efficiency in Appliances in the Middle East and North African region, hosted by the Copenhagen Center on Energy Efficiency. My name is Valeria. I am Research Assistant at the Copenhagen Center and moderator for this webinar. A couple of things before we move to the main content of our webinar. This webinar is going to be about 90 minutes long, including time for Q&A at the end. In case you cannot stay until the end or want to get back to our presentations, all the material and the recording of the whole webinar will be available online in a few days on the Copenhagen Center's Knowledge Management System. And many more other webinars and informations are there. Have a look. I'll give you in a few minutes. A few things about the Copenhagen Center. The Center conducts research and advisory activities in the field of energy efficiency and serves as energy efficiency hub for the Sustainable Energy for All initiative. The Center has an established network of global, regional, and national partners with a broad range of stakeholders to help accelerate the implementation of energy efficiency activities. On a regular basis, the Copenhagen Center is conducting webinars. All materials, including recordings and presentations from previous webinars, can be found on the Copenhagen Center's Knowledge Management System under the e-learning section. The material of today's webinar will be uploaded shortly. I would like to briefly introduce the speakers of today's webinar. Michael Scholand is Senior Advisor at the Collaborative Labeling and Appliance Standards Program. Sara Ibrahim Elhag is a senior sustainable energy expert at the Regional Center for Renewable Energy and Energy Efficiency. And Kawther Lihidheb is a senior energy efficiency specialist at ECONOLER. Finally, I would like to inform you that you can send us your questions during the presentations, and we will do our best to answer as many as we can at the end. Please do not forget to mention the name of the panelists for the question. Perfect. Now we can start our webinar with an introduction from Laura Wiehler on the Regional Center for Regional Energy Efficiency and Renewable Energy.
Yes, hello everybody from my side. Hello from Cairo. We are the Regional Center for Renewable Energy and Energy Efficiency. But first of all, actually, let me thank you, Valerie, for this opportunity today. It's the second webinar that we're doing together. And thank you also very much for the panelists. I'm very much looking forward for this. We as RCREEE, we have 17 Arab member states. So we are serving for them as a think tank alliance in a way. We have a focal point in each of our member states. Mostly they are situated in the electricity ministries or related ministries or authorities that are dealing with renewable energies and energy efficiency. RCREEE was founded in 2008 and then we built up from some member countries to today 17 Arab member states. We are covering the region from the Middle East over the Mashriq to the Maghreb and 4 sub-Saharan countries. So we are really, our mission is to support the Arab countries in driving their energy transitions. So when the way we are doing this is actually that we are, first of all, the official technical arm of the League of Arab States. We are trying to promote a lot of policy dialogues and learning experience, peer-to-peer learning, and to promote a lot of capacity development within our member states. We were the first regional center for renewable energies and energy efficiency. Today, there is the global network of the regional sustainable energy centers. 4 of them are situated in Africa. We ourselves are situated in Cairo with another office in Tunisia. And we have a lot of local antennas, and we're working with many experts in the region and on the international level. So the areas that we are focusing on is, for one, the sustainable energy policies and the technical support. Here, for example, we are helping our member states with the national energy efficiency and national renewable energy action plans in building them up and also in the end to implement them. We're supporting them from A to Z. So at the second step, we are here as the energy market research and knowledge management. So we are trying to gather many information from our region, the latest energy data, and to spread them to developers, to policymakers, to everybody who has an interest in these data in order to drive the market transition. Further, another point that we're working on is the investment promotion. It is very important to overcome the financing barriers that the region is facing. So we ourselves are involved in several funds that are spread throughout the region. We are also supporting countries in their social and environmental studies. For example, here in Egypt, we have the Active Turbine Management Program, where we are supporting the developers of the wind fields in assessing the environmental issues. For example, here in Egypt, the bird migration is a very big issue that has to be considered. So we are supporting the developers to monitor the birds and to have valid data of when they have to shut down their wind farms. These are just some of our areas. We are, of course, all of this we're doing with the support of many, many partners. Yes, we're very lucky. And for now, I wish you all a very interesting webinar.
Thanks very much for that introduction, Laura. My name is Michael Scholand, and I work at the Collaborative Labeling and Standards Program, CLASP, and I'm based in the Europe office of CLASP. So I'm going to speak tonight about the labeling and appliance standards for energy efficiency from an international perspective. So just a quick word about CLASP for those of you who haven't heard of us before. CLASP is a US non-governmental, non-profit organization that was founded 20 years ago. We've worked in over 50 countries around the world. We have a staff of more than 40 people now, with dedicated offices in Africa, India, and Europe. Our Africa office is in Nairobi. And CLASP's mission statement is to support the development and implementation of policies and programs to improve the energy and environmental performance of appliances and equipment we use every day. So the topic of tonight is about appliance efficiency standards and labeling, and that is precisely what CLASP specializes in. That's the function of our NGO. And on the last slide, I have a link to our webpage if you'd like to learn more. So first of all, I wanted to start out by just saying electricity enables us to enjoy things, right? Quality of life is really about services. It's not about consuming electricity. You know, we like things like cold drinks and cool air, bright lights, and so on. And the principle of energy efficiency is that it allows you to enjoy those same services while simply consuming less. And really policymakers, the governments in our countries hold the key to unlocking that potential. Some of the benefits that you might speak about with the policymakers in your region about why you should move towards efficient products include things such as household savings. So here it'll realize lower energy bills for homes. In fact, in the EU, the eco-design and energy labeling programs by the year 2020 will have saved an average of 500 euros per household per year across Europe. So it's been a very successful program in reducing household energy bills. Another reason is reliability of the grid. If you're experiencing brownouts such as voltage sags, for example, or blackouts where there's a lack of power in a region, this can reduce the incidences of brownouts and blackouts in your region because you'll be lopping off the peak power demands, and by reducing consumption where power is being used, there's more to be shared. It can save national investment. It could, for example, in some countries, a lot of capital is tied up in loans for power stations and upgrades to the grid. but if you can reduce demand where it's existing and on the grid, that can slow down the rate of growth for your demand, and that will save some national investment. Another reason is market protection. As I mentioned, Europe is regulating products. In North America, there's regulations. In Southeast Asia, China, many countries are moving forward with setting efficiency requirements. And what will happen if your region doesn't do that is you will then find that you may become a dumping ground for technologies that are banned elsewhere in the world. So that's a real reason to start looking at these policy measures soon. Energy imports, if you're a country that has to import the power, the fuel that you use in your power stations, that's a capital outflow, and that can affect your balance of payments and the value of your currency. So if you can reduce consumption, reduce the amount of power that you're using, that will lower the fuel purchases that you have to make. And then finally, climate change, right? This is energy efficiency. Using less energy means lower CO2 emissions from your country. So this is really the soft energy path. Okay. So staying on that theme, I love this slide. This explains how you might think about energy efficiency as a power station, but not a megawatt power station, rather a negawatt. Because you're freeing up capacity. It's cheaper and it's faster than building new capacity. And of course has zero running costs and zero emissions. And energy efficiency really is the cornerstone of climate protection. I'm sure many of you are familiar with the publications of the IEA in Paris. As I was preparing for this webinar, I was very happy to discover the Energy Efficiency 2018 report is free to download from the IEA, and you can click on the link there on the slide when you get this to download a copy for yourself. And it shows this graph here, which is actually from the World Energy Outlook from the previous year, from 2017, where the IEA has projected out a new policy scenario, and in reference to that, relative to that as the baseline, a sustainable development scenario where they try and reduce the emissions, the CO2 emissions by, gosh, what is that, about 17, nearly 17 gigatons, it looks like. And of that share, energy efficiency is the highest portion. It's 7.1 gigatons of CO2 emissions in 2040. That's there for potential. And wrapped up in that number, it's not all appliance efficiency. That includes buildings and appliances, as well as industry efficiency and transportation efficiency potentials. So it's a combination of things, and really I encourage you to have a look at that reference. And then here, so let's talk about market transformation as a principle. In order to move your market forward from inefficient products towards more efficient, it takes many different sort of interventions. One is, of course, energy and quality standards. So this would include things like minimum energy performance standards and performance requirements that you have that mandate a certain level. So that would be considered a market push intervention. Then there is labeling and education of consumers in your markets. It's communications, outreach, and so on. So those labeling programs, those are considered market pull. So by informing the consumer, they'll make more responsible choices, and they will move the market towards higher efficiency. You can also have incentive programs and organize and participate in bulk procurement contracts where you can buy a lot of an efficient device, efficient product, and that will bring the cost down for consumers. So that's another good intervention there. Compliance testing and quality assurance is critical. So I talk about this in a couple of slides, but essentially the idea is that when you have regulations and requirements, you need to enforce them as well to ensure that consumers get what they're supposed to be receiving in the marketplace, and that manufacturers are being truthful in the labeling of products. And then finally, I wanted to highlight here global collaboration and knowledge sharing. And I think these, the global network of regional sustainable energy centers is really fantastic. And so I just put this picture of you guys here on the bottom of this slide. I think this resource is brilliant. You can share best practice around the world through this network. And of course, regional initiatives are also very, very valuable when governments can cooperate. So excellent model there. Okay. Now, just a slide here on the CLASP policy database. If you click on the link on this page, you can have a look at policies that CLASP has compiled into this database from around the world. And you can search on various products, you can search on regions, types of policies, be they labeling or MEPs and otherwise. So it's a very interesting resource and good place to study what some of the best practices around the world on standards and labeling. And this graph on the right shows you if you were to sort by country for room air conditioning, refrigerators, lighting, and motors, the existing number of policy measures that are in place for Africa, Latin America, South and Southeast Asia, and the other countries. And then it shows you there's a lot of potential of countries that aren't in the database at all and could have policy measures there. So I guess this is just to say there's a lot of work to be done here. Still a lot of potential out there. So I just have a couple of slides. I want to talk about cooling and lighting to give you an idea of some of the global trends in SNL. Some of you may have heard of the Kigali Cooling Efficiency Program, that's KSEP. So this is a very large $50 million philanthropic program to support the Kigali Amendment of the Montreal Protocol. And the idea here is that it'll be phasing out harmful refrigerants that are used in air conditioning and refrigeration, and also advance efficiency in those appliances as well. And the estimated savings potential here is a gigaton of CO2 between the years 2022 and 2030 from energy efficiency standards being introduced for cooling products around the world. And that's equivalent to the CO2 emissions of 2.2 billion barrels of oil. And there's a few activities here that I've just highlighted from some of the work that CLASP is doing on cooling efficiency, air conditioning, and refrigeration in a few different countries and regions. And actually those two, in Brazil and the Philippines, are also hyperlinks. If you would like to have a look at those studies, you can click on those links and receive the report. And then just a couple of slides on lighting. So lighting accounts for around 15% of world electricity consumption. And there is a technology shift underway at the moment with incandescent, halogen, and now CFL, so fluorescent technology, being phased out, and LEDs are really taking over in all segments of the market. Payback periods are very short. For some of the calculations I've done where we're working in Southern Africa, we're talking a matter of months for LEDs to pay back. And then of course they last for several years. And MEPs and labels through lighting can deliver approximately 40 to 60% energy savings in the lighting sector overall. So it's a very substantial reduction. And if you couple the efficiency requirements with quality performance requirements, such as around color and lifetime and flicker and so on, that can deliver a better quality light for consumers as well. So here's just a slide to talk about some of the trends. UN Environment, the U4E program, is currently working with more than 10 countries around the world on implementing regulations to phase out inefficient lighting. And as CLASP, I've been working here in Europe on a few different standards, and I wanted for lighting, and I wanted to mention these. So Europe phased out mains voltage halogen spotlights. So those would be directional lights, the little spotlights, in September of 2016. Then non-directional halogens, which you see a little illustration of it to the right there, were phased out in September of last year. Compact fluorescent lamps, so that's this one here, the twisty fluorescent tube one. Those are now scheduled to be phased out in September of 2021. And T8 linear fluorescent tubes, the 4-foot and 5-foot that you have, you see very often in offices and airports and so on. Those are being phased out in September 2023. So there's a real trend here towards moving away from these inefficient and, in the case of fluorescent, it's about it uses twice as much energy compared to LED today, and in the future it'll be even the LEDs will be even more efficient relative to fluorescent. But you also get away from mercury because mercury is obviously used in fluorescent light sources, and LED doesn't have it. So yeah. And there's an article, if you wanted to read, that was published in October last year in one of the trade magazines here, well, Global Trade Magazine, LED Magazine, about halogen light bulbs heading to the sunset, thanks to LED. Okay, and then I mentioned earlier that having good policies is all fine and a very good idea, but you need to ensure that companies comply with those requirements, that governments monitor the markets and enforce the regulations when there's incidences of non-compliance. So this slide is really just addressing that, highlighting the importance of compliance to safeguard the interests of consumers as well as the environment and the objectives of governments who are implementing the policies. And so conformity assessment involves things like test reports on products, certification processes, registry databases, and then once those products are placed on the market, governments need to maintain surveillance, monitoring, sampling, testing, verifying reports, and so on. And if there are incidences of non-compliance, then the government should prosecute those to ensure that other companies can see that if somebody's cheating on the regulation, that there are consequences for that. And that will serve as a deterrent and improve levels of conformance in the market. And then my last slide here is just to highlight regional harmonization. It's fantastic to hear how many countries are part of this Energy Efficiency Center in Cairo. And you'll find that by working together cooperatively and sharing the information and the standards and that you're developing, it will lower costs for consumers because if you have a harmonized standard across your region, because it's a bigger market, you'll find more suppliers coming to enter that market, and they will be in compliance with the requirements for yourself and your neighbors. So that lowers consumers' costs, it lowers government costs in terms of preparing the test methods and the MEPS documents, the legal documents that they adopt. It lowers supplier costs, so the suppliers who are bringing the products, if one test method is accepted in multiple countries, then that lowers their costs for compliance certification, and you'll actually get higher rates of compliance as well. There is also the opportunity, governments can cooperate on market surveillance, and this actually happens right now in the European Union. We have 28 countries in the EU, and if Denmark or France or the UK finds an issue with a product, they report that to their other governments, and they also sample and verify. So there's a benefit here of sharing market enforcement information that can happen at the government level. And then finally, faster and less expensive testing. Harmonized testing creates a larger choice of laboratories that can be used to conduct product tests for verification purposes. Okay, so that was my slide on regional harmonization. Those are my details and the class website if you'd like to see that. And I will take questions at the end. And I'm going to hand now over to Sara to take you to the next section.
Hello, everybody. Thank you, Michael. My name is Sara Elhag, and today I'm going to present energy efficiency for appliances in the MENA region. And I will just continue from where Michael stopped. So in this presentation, we're going to have an overview of the MENA region. We're going to identify the problem. What is the problem with energy efficient appliances and why do we need them in the first place? And what is the proposed solution? Then we're going to talk about the regional status quo, the MENA region. After that, we're talking about regional maps and labels, planning and implementation factors, the country categorization of the region and our steps forward, and finally, we're going to have some recommendations. So to start with, the MENA region, as you see in the map to your right hand, bridges between Southern Europe and North Africa. The region's weather is a combination of both African and Mediterranean, so we're having dry summers and rainy winters. Temperatures are really high throughout the year, but most of the countries lie within the solar belt, which means that they have high average of annual solar irradiation. The region is actually privileged with diversified conventional energy resources as well as natural resources. So the ongoing socioeconomic trend is that the annual growth of population accompanied with excessive modernization and industrialization, which means that looking at the map or the graph to the top right hand, you will see that there was some sort of decoupling between the energy supply or energy generation and the population growth up to the year 2014. But thereafter, what happened? What happened is the energy generation falls behind and it did not keep up with the population growth. So we mean that we need more energy because we're going into more modernized lifestyles, because we're going into a more industrialized world. And so the increased usage of energy also resulted in increased power consumption, which is accompanied with increased greenhouse gases emission. This is actually shown in the other graph. So we can see that going from a trend from 2013 up to 2016, we can see that for all the countries in the region, there is an increase in the greenhouse gas emission, which is not good. We're harming the environment. So I think by now we have identified the problem. In this slide, we can see that the problem is that we need to cope up with our energy needs that are increasing annually, but also we need to be kind to our environment. And similar to the rest of the world, this region is striving to ensure energy security. So, however, the rapid depletion of the natural resources and the MENA region, as everywhere else in the world, and the ever-increasing population growth, along with the modernization needs, makes the region in a constant quest to fulfill the energy gap. And here is where the role of efficient appliances come. The increased importance of efficient appliances originates from the proven fact that successful implementation of energy efficient measures would help in the global energy security, as well as it also contributes to economical growth worldwide. So actually, energy efficient appliances can be used as an effective tool by the countries themselves to deliver their announced SDG targets, SDG 7 for ensuring energy for all, and also SDG 13, and to implement their climate change action plan. So in our next couple of slides, we're going to talk about the regional status quo. The MENA region, as shown to the map to your left, to your right hand, it can be seen that I will be talking about a number of countries. I'm not going to talk about the whole MENA region now, but I'm going to talk about a study that have covered the Southeast Mediterranean region that is actually part of the MENA region. And in order to understand the current status of EE of appliances in the region, a number of analysis factors have been studied. This would give a better assessment of the regional current status. So basically, when we're talking about energy efficiency, we would like to know exactly the amount of energy consumption in the region. So we'll start about identifying the consumption of the region, and then we zoom in to identify the electrical consumption of residential sector. Another factor is to try to assess the appliances share of the residential sector. We'll also talk about if the countries have existing NEAPs, which is a National Energy Efficiency Action Plan, and if the country have a dedicated energy efficiency authority, the list of appliances and labels, and the minimum energy performance standards that are set in place. So, as I said, we're going to focus in the studies and results from now on this presentation on the SAM region, and we're going to cover only 8 countries, which are Algeria, Tunisia, Morocco, Libya, Egypt, Palestine, Jordan, and Lebanon. A study of the trend line 2010 to 2016, as shown in the first graph, shows the regional power consumption per sector. So it can be seen that the residential sector consumption counts to about 42% of the total consumption as per country or as per the region, which is the highest, and this is followed by the industrial sector. This highlights the importance to work on home appliances in order to reduce residential sector consumption. And also zooming a little bit in and trying to focus on the residential consumption, we can find that the appliances share of residential consumption can be divided like the two main consumers would be the AC and fans, which count to around 23% of the consumption, and lighting. That counts around 19%. I think Michael said that the international percent of lighting is 15%. So in the MENA region, it goes up to 19%. Also, we tried to make an assessment or a listing of all the maps and labels set in place in these countries, the 8 countries of the SAM region. And it could be seen that the refrigerator and air conditioner are the most that are being labeled and that have minimum energy performance standards, followed by lighting and washing machines, and finally TVs. So I think the reason why these appliances are on the top of the list would need a very more elaborated market study, but generally speaking, it would be because these are the type of home appliances that consumes the most power, and also the appliances that are most widely spread, or maybe there are the appliances that work within the peak load, so it's a critical time where the networks need to be stable. So these are whatever the reason is, so these are the appliances which the countries, these 8 countries have decided to go for maps and labeling for. And it could be seen that for the MENA region, most countries apply mandatory map scheme as shown in the graph in front of us, and also they use comparative labeling. So we only have voluntary labeling in Lebanon and for air conditioning, lighting, and refrigeration. So I think this gives us an overview about how things work in the region and where they tend to have more interest in terms of EE in appliances. In order to have a successful EE action plan, we need to identify which key factor would influence the implementation of EE measures. So based on the studies that we have conducted, we identified analysis factor, and we have recognized that there are 2 main pillars that are the most influential. This can be grouped in a number of factors that we call planning factors, and the other one called implementation factor. So let me give just an example about the planning factors. These are the things that the authority or the government would do. It's they set authorization of maps and labels. They have a regulatory framework. They have a dedicated authority, and they announce specific targets, EE targets, and also they have a national energy efficiency action plan. So these planning factors will, if they are set in place, would really help moving the EE measures action plan forward. So the other thing that would help is the availability of market and ESCOs, availability of national manufacturing. If there are existing test labs to test the efficiency and standards of the appliances, and if we have MVE set in place, MVE schemes, that is monitoring, verification, and enforcement scheme in each country. The success of any EE action plan requires balancing between the planning and implementation measures or factor, as we have identified them as the two main pillars. So for things to go forward, we need to have EE targets announced, we need to have dedicated authority, we need to have NIAB in the country, also regulatory framework, but also we need to have the testing labs, MVE schemes, we need to have national manufacturing. What I want to say in this slide is that they should go hand by hand. We cannot lean only on one side. If we have policies but we cannot implement them, we don't have MVE measures, then it will be like a lame walking. But we need to balance between the two main pillars in order to move forward effectively. So this recent study showed that the countries can be divided into 3 categories. And the way we divided the country in the region into these categories is based on their achievement and progress within the planning and implementation. So we let us so-called category I is as advanced progress countries. So they showed advanced achievement and progress in the both planning and implementation factors. Some of these countries clearly came out: Tunisia and Egypt. And the second category is of the medium progress countries. The countries that have started to adopt these measures started with having planning and implementation factors set in place, and they are progressing. For example, we're having Palestine working on that. And the countries with the minimum progress, but this is also for unidentified reason still. It can be geopolitical risks, it can be also political situation. We're having Libya as an example of these countries. So having that set in place and having that been said, so what would be the steps forward? What would we do to move these things forward? We have identified some of the recommendations that would start with identification of obstacles at the national level. We need to know what is the problem in order to find solution for it. We need to develop customized recommendation, and this is for each and every country. Develop customized recommendation for individual countries, because generic recommendation might not be working in specific countries' profile. The country should be studied as an individual case, identify the obstacle, and then take it from there on. But the most important emerged that the capacity building, and this should start from the top down. For example, we need policies to be set in place, but we need the policymakers we need to have capacity needs assessment for policymaker and people who work with, for example, financial institution who would fund and finance EE projects. We need to have capacity need assessment and then capacity buildings. Also, if we're working from the root grass, we also need to have awareness and media campaigns for the public at the national level, because people need to know that although these appliances, efficient appliances, might be a little bit higher in prices, but on the long run, there will be winners yielding them. So finally, the general recommendation would be to create a regional directory of updated appliances data, because sometimes there is a difficulty of obtaining information. The directory should include information related to maps and national data, the labs and testing facility, availability of them or not, what do they do. The second recommendation will be to conduct a detailed regional market study. We need to know the appliances market study, market penetration, and also one important thing, we need to exactly know the effect of the black markets, the cheap appliances, because this might have a high unseen effect on the market structure. Third recommendation will be the alignment of regional policies that support acceleration of adaptation of the EE measures. For example, having incentives, setting in place regional trade and commerce law. All this together would help to create a very attractive environment for a regional program for appliances. Our fourth recommendation is to make available testing facilities at regional level at least, because test facilities can be quite expensive. It's not recommended to have it at each and every country, but at regional level, it would be quite feasible to move things forward. And the last recommendation would that countries would adopt and encourage the emerging energy-saving technologies. So we move forward and we try to, for example, we've been talking about the LED. The LED is not emerging technology, but it's been there for a while now. But we need the countries to adopt these technologies and move forward side by side with the technology. So I think it's time for Q&A, or maybe at the last of the session. You can see here the link for RCREEE, and you can contact me, of course, at my email. And thank you. Now I move to my colleague, Kawther.
Hello, everybody. Thank you, Sara. Thank you, Michael. I am Kawther Lihidheb. I am an energy efficiency expert, senior expert at ECONOLER. I think I will move to present a real case study of EE labeling and MEPS program implemented in Tunisia. I think that Tunisia, it was the first country that have implemented the MEPS and labeling program, and in my opinion, it was a successful program, and it has been shared by with the other countries in the MENA region as well. So, as mentioned by my colleagues Michael and Sara, the MEPS and labeling program. I don't know if you are. You see my screen. The minimum energy performance standard set a minimum requirement for energy efficiency for various equipment. Label, however, inform buyer about the product energy performance. So both of them are targeting the market, the sales market for new new categories of equipment, but they don't target the equipment already installed and functional, and they will be concerned at the end of their life. The idea of this EE instrument, policy instrument, is pushing and pulling the market toward more energy efficient appliances. This is the idea. The policy instrument, both MEPS and labeling, are playing a major role in order to transform the market to more efficient appliances. That's why you have started to implement this EE policy in Tunisia. And my presentation will focus on the main steps and the main component of our program in Tunisia here. If I can introduce our EE labeling and MEPS program, the labeling and MEPS in Tunisia for household appliances came into force in 2004. The program is coordinated by the National Agency for Energy Conservation, which is ANME. The ANME is created in 1984 and 1985, sorry, and it's the technical arm of the government and of the state in order to implement the energy efficiency policy, not only energy efficiency and as well renewable energy policy. This program was implemented by the National Agency for Energy, ANME, but with the involvement of our main public and private key stakeholder concerned by the program, like INORP, which is the The standard body, CETIM, which is, and I will present after, the testing facility. Elhag is presenting the main stakeholder, like importer or of equipment or a producer, and ODC is the representative of consumer. The program is implemented also with close cooperation with the Ministry of Industry and the Ministry of Trade, with the Ministry of Energy as well, of course. The EE labeling and MEPS program in Tunisia is targeting at the moment 3 types of product. I will present them, and you have a lot of similarity of the EU. It's some you have benefit from the experience of the EU in this field, and especially because our market is a little bit similar to the EU market. So that by conducting our study on the appliances market in Tunisia, you see that there is a big similarity with the European market of the kind of products, so that at the end you have benefits from the work done in the EU market in order to adapt it to the Tunisian market as well. We will present also our label, which has a lot of similarity of the EU label, but with some adaptation as well. And you have introduced also some maps in some products, and you have for all the measurement aspect, it's standardized. The standards are harmonized with IEC and ISO standards as well. So if you see here the category of equipment, appliances concerned by mandatory and MEPS label. So you have home refrigerator, freezers, room air conditioning, which are mandatory at the moment. Incandescent lamp, they have introduced MEPS as well in Tunisia, and washer and lamps are under development at the moment. This is the 2 label. Just to give you an overview of the label in Tunisia, this label has been tested before adapting it with the consumers here to see its acceptability, and when testing it, we have how to say constated that more than 60% understood this kind of label. It's bilingual. You have French and Arabic, and the differences between us and the European labels that you have here, instead of using letter, you are using numbers, because people here in Tunisia are more familiar with number than with letter, but you can at the same category, you are using the same calculation of the index, and it's harmonized with the EU in order to allow also the market to how to say to test a product, and they can be sold as well, be sold in European countries, and using the same calculation of the index. Regarding the cold appliances, labeling entered into force in 2004. It became mandatory, which is the differences between European and Tunisia, that every model must be tested and certified by a third-party laboratory, which is in our case the CETIM, before being placed on the market. It's the differences between us and the European. It's in the European country, they choose the self-declaration. However, in Tunisia, it goes to before every appliance, before being in the market, sold in the market, have to be tested in a third-party laboratory, which is in our case CETIM. And after that, you have introduced MEPS and announced it progressively. So you can see that progressively you have introduced MEPS from the beginning of 2007 to 2010, and the similarity between us is like a class C in European countries, and in 2010 it's similar to B in the European countries. So you have chosen to use the same calculation index performance as European countries. For room air conditioner, you have followed the same the same process, and it entered into force to be mandatory energy labeling in 2009, and the same process has been used. So every model must be tested and certified by third-party laboratory, which is in the case the CETIM. And you have introduced also the following maps, announced them 2010, 2011, and 2012, and progressively 2012 only room air conditioners sold in Tunisia market must have an energy label 3 or better. Here is an overview of our legal framework by introducing them. It's based on the law. It's not based only on the energy law. It's based also on all the law which is related to consumer protection, standardization, and the security of product. And after that, you have a legal framework with decree, which allow to introduce labeling, especially labeling for all appliances. This is the framework decree, and after that, each equipment you have like a narrative which precise for each equipment the content regarding labeling and as well regarding maps. So you have at least here 4 RCREEE and based on test standards which are prepared with our standardization body, which is NRP in the case of Tunisia. This is an overview of our legal framework regarding introducing maps and labeling in our country. So what I mentioned that in Tunisia, sorry. In Tunisia, it was agreed that you go not through testing self-declaration, but to test every product before sold it in the countries through an independent third-party laboratory. So that before implementing the program, you have implemented the testing facility in CETIM. Now you have a testing facility for refrigerator, for room air conditioner, for lighting, and for laundry washing machine. The testing protocol was adopted with NRP, which is the standard body. And in this case, in order to be accredited to laboratory, you have conducted a lot of pilot tests before entering into force. And the pilot tests allow us to test a lot of refrigerator and room air conditioner before entering into force the mandatory e-labeling, which allow at the same time to test the process, to test the capability of the laboratory, to train also people in the laboratory and conduct this kind of energy performance testing, and as well to give like an incentive to all the actors, especially producer, importer, in order to test their appliances and to have an overview of our energy performance distribution of the appliances sold in the market before entering into force. So it's like how to say it's a pilot program before entering into force of a real program. Qu'est-ce qui se passe là? Alors, the implementation process is a little bit also different from the European country because, as I said, every product before being sold in the market has to be tested in the CETIM. After that, the CETIM, which is our laboratory, after that, the producer or the importer, before editing his label, he has to get the approval of the ANME. The ANME will approve the content of the label and give him the possibility to use this label and to affix it to its product. And the Ministry of Trade, with coordination with the Ministry of Trade, so there is a relation between CETIM and ANME, Ministry of Trade, which are in charge of the control of the market. and there is a database between all these actors, shared between all these actors, to have all the information about the energy performance of each product sold in Tunisia. And at the same time, it allows us as well to make all the control of the market between within these three actors. So if you want as well to make a control of the market, the Ministry of Trade will also send a sample of equipment or of appliances to the state team, and within the coordination with the INMO as well. There is a lot of supportive measure as well before conducting this program. There is a lot of training has been done, not only with consumer, not only with manufacturer and importer. You have done a lot of training with market controller as well, in order to inform them how to control that the label, the content of the label, is it correct? What does it mean, the label on each information on it? We have conducted also, it's an overview of pilot program and a campaign, communication campaign through all the media, mailing, in retailer as well, meeting and seminar at the beginning, in order to inform people about the fact that when they are they have to compare the label before buying a new product, and to be sure that the label is in the refrigerator. And now when you visit Tunisia, most of the equipment, appliances like refrigerator, have the label, and people when you visit their home as well, you can find the label still affixed to their refrigerator, because I think the label is a little bit nice as well. What you see in the market transformation, you can see that if you see before implementing the label and maps and the impact in cold appliances market, you see that the market was pushed in order to see that the share of the most important part of the market is aligned to the maps. So if you want that our market has to be transformed to better, you need to implement a new maps, because now the maps is still 3 and better. So you see that the market in 2013, it was how to say, the distribution is on aligned to the maps, and as well for room air conditioner, because now the maps now is regarding having 3 and better, so that you see that the impact before implementing the labeling and maps and after that. However, the labeling shows that some of them are in most advanced energy performance. So I think this is a continuous process. So you need to review our labeling and our maps in order to ensure that the market transformation towards more energy efficient will be a continuous process, not only stop it because there is a maps and no progress. So this is an idea about the program, how it has been implemented in Tunisia. In my opinion, what gives this program the main success factor of this program is at the beginning, because the INMO was not only the coordinator of the program, but INMO plays a major role in order to convince all the main stakeholders to be involved from the beginning, and some of them are to build this inter-ministerial support of the program, because it's important that the Ministry of Trade has to be involved from the beginning and has to be see the benefits of introducing this kind of program in our economy. So it's important that that the Ministry of Commerce and the Ministry of Industry and Energy works together. This is the case of the program in Tunisia. You have in Tunisia, you started by a single product, which is refrigerator and freezer, and you have demonstrated the success before including the other product. When you see that the success of this kind of program, and you see the success with the refrigerator, I think the process has, the policymaker is more convinced, and all the actors are involved after that to the other product using the same process. You have started by mandatory energy labeling and then introducing maps, which is a good approach, I think. So, and announce maps at the beginning. The label design was tested before its adoption, and you have been ensured that is easily understood by the consumer and is motivating them in order to choose the best equipment, and it has been to be supported by an awareness program as well. The fact that you have worked from the beginning with local producer and importer prior to the adopting of the regulation, this is ensure that all the parties are aware of the requirement and they have developed a strategy in order to meet this requirement. I think this is very important from the beginning. It's not something which is imposed at the end. And at the same time, wholesalers and retailer, the fact that they have been involved with us at the beginning with a pilot program, and after that they have been involved as well in the different campaign in order to sell the image of a retailer who are proposing to the market more efficient equipment, and at the same time they have to ensure that the wholesalers will explain with a good way the importance of the label and the importance of to buy more efficient product. The fact that you have developed an internationally accredited laboratory, and this infrastructure have helped in implementing a product certification scheme, and at the same time, the fact that all the appliances are tested at the same laboratory gives us more credibility to the information of the energy performance that is used in the market. And at the same time, the fact that you have launched a national awareness campaign to educate consumer about the label, about the energy consumption of the product, about the benefits to be gained from investing in higher efficiency equipment. All of these policy package, all of these activities helps in order to ensure that our project deliver the energy efficiency that you are waiting for. So I am sure that this kind of EE policy is very, very interesting. It's the most cost-effective way to reduce energy use and greenhouse gases emission that mentioned by my colleague as well. It's important to engage all stakeholders. I think you cannot succeed if you cannot engage them from the beginning, and particularly the appliances manufacturer and importer, and through each stage of program development. It's important to engage them from the beginning in order to ensure that at the end they will accept and they will comply with this. Enforcement, it's very, very important to ensure that there is effective implementation and to create this aspect of process improvement to ensure that the market is sustainable and you can transform the market progressively. So it's important that an enforcement strategy has to be implemented from the beginning. And why not? Because the program of labeling and maps is targeting only the new product in the market to create some new innovative mechanism to place the stock, and especially why not in our country for low-income households. And at the same time, like I mentioned, has been mentioned by my colleague regarding the harmonization. It's important to harmonize between not only MENA countries, but as well at international level. in order to reduce the program cost by adopting an existing program, so to benefit from the experience of others and to go quickly, and avoid and remove indirect trade barriers. It's important that to benefit from policies implemented all over the region or world, all over the world. This is, how to say, an overview of our program here in Tunisia, and I would like to thank you, Adwan, for your attention, and we are here to answer to your question if you have you need more clarification about the program. Thank you for your attention. And now I think I will give the floor to Valeria.
Yes, thank you very much, all of you, for these very interesting presentations. And now it's time for the Q&A session of this webinar. I already see that we received quite a number of questions for our panelists. So for Michael, for example, there is a question regarding the LED story in India. The question comes by asking, on grid reliability, you have mentioned that efficient product reduces peak demand. Unfortunately, if this aspect is, if PQ aspect is not paid attention, an inferior quality of energy efficiency LED would ask for an higher demand from a grid than a good high power factor oriented LED of same rating. Is the energy efficiency community looking at this aspect while celebrating energy efficiency attainment? In India, this is seldom done. Thank you, Michael.
Okay, so this question is about the power factor requirements for LED lighting. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay, so I guess this is an area where I have found some disagreement amongst experts. Essentially, there's two things. One is when it comes to LED lighting, displacement power factor is actually more important than power factor. Power factor is something for compact fluorescent lamps, but there's a difference for LEDs, so displacement power factor is the one that really should be discussed in relation to LED lighting. However, I know that some tests were conducted in Denmark, I believe, where they intentionally used low power factor lighting in households to see if there was an impact on the grid, on the transformers in the local area network, and then they had a case in control where they had a house with low power factor or several houses and then several houses on a different transformer with good power factor, and they couldn't find any measurable impact in the losses on the distribution network, the wires or the transformer. So the experts who were involved in that study believe the factor is not something to worry about. But I have heard other experts say the opposite. So I think it's something that it really gets decided at the national level. The way class would approach this is to present the evidence of these different studies, and the decision is then made by the policymakers. Of course, manufacturers can make LED lighting with good power factors. It requires more electronics, which will increase cost, and at the same time, it could shorten the life of the LEDs, because as you put more components into the product, there's more opportunities for catastrophic failure as a component can fail. So that can reduce the lifetime at the same time. So it's, so you could increase costs and shorten lifetime, and the alternative is, and there's not a clear basis for saying high power factor is important. So yeah, and feel free to contact me, by the way, the person who asked this question, and I'll share with you some of the studies that I've seen and some of the European experts who've weighed in on this issue. So you have my details there on the slide. Okay, is that all right?
Yeah, thank you very much, Michael. This was very informative. And here we have a question for Sara. One of the attendees is asking how much, in terms of percentage, of appliance production in the MENA region is domestic and how much is it imported? Thank you very much.
Okay, just to get the question right, the question is about how much of the appliances in the region is locally manufactured and how much is imported?
Yes, how much is domestic and how much is imported?
Okay, actually, as I showed the study we've been working on only covers 8 countries of the MENA region, so we still don't have the full view of the whole region. But I think this this can easily be found. But not much local manufacturing is done in all of the countries, for example, and some countries focuses on only some type of appliances. We know that Tunisia and Egypt have a good national or local manufacturer. Industrial, but some other countries, for example, doesn't have the same. But I can dig into this and give the answer later for this question.
Thank you very much. And here we have a question for Kawther. How the market monitoring is processed? Is the Ministry of Trade that can simply pick from the market to test in the CTAM again, and how to make sure that the labels are right? Thank you.
Thank you, Valeria. Yes, the Ministry of Trade is involved with us in the control of the market surveillance. Regarding the label, it's easier because they can control only that the label is here and to be conform of the model exposed in the distributor. However, I know sometimes with the support of ONME, they took a sample of appliances and to test them again in the CTIM. This is a part of market surveillance. But you know that the Ministry of Trade don't have at the moment a lot of resources to do it, so it's supported sometimes by the budget with the ANAMU, so they can make a sample of equipment, refrigerator, and test them to the CTIM and check that which is indicated in the label is conform, and and as well that the equipment is conform to the maps as well. But the fact that in Tunisia you don't have only the self-declarations, like you have this decided to test every equipment before putting it in the market in the CTIM, reduced a lot how to say the non-conformity of the equipment, because the database is shared between the Ministry of Trade and as well between ANME and the CTIM. But at the same time, yes, the Ministry of Trade is in charge of the surveillance of the market, and sometimes you did this kind of check. Yeah.
Great, thank you very much. Here we have another question for Michael. In regards to incentivizing the uptake of energy efficiency, what is your take on energy efficiency attribution programs, similar to the RCREEs for renewables? Thank you very much.
Sorry, can you repeat the question? I didn't follow.
The question is regarding the incentivizing the uptake of energy efficiency. What is your take on energy efficiency attribution programs, similar to the RCREEs for renewables? Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. So I guess there are many incentive programs that can be used. Different approaches. Some incentive programs are organized through electric utilities. That was, in fact, how I got started working on lighting. Lighting is sort of my area that I work in. And I was working in South Africa with the Eskom, the utility there, on a demand-side management program. where they were introducing compact fluorescent lamps, and there were they had incentive schemes. They had a coupon scheme, so consumers could get a discount when they went to the store. But there's lots of different schemes. If you're talking about refrigerators, very often the incentive scheme is based on a trade-in program, so that you bring your old fridge when you get the new one that's more efficient. Because if you don't have something like that, what would happen is people would either sell the old fridge to somebody else in the market, or have a second fridge and just have the more efficient one in their house and have twice the refrigeration capacity. So if the objective is to get more efficient fridges into the market and to reduce that load, a trade-in scheme is desirable. I think incentive schemes are quite useful for markets in terms of preparing them for mandatory regulation. So if it's a greenfield site, if you haven't had any regulation in your market before, an incentive program can, particularly if you have good procurement specifications for that, so that you have you take into consideration, for instance, on lighting, you might consider efficiency or efficacy, you might consider color rendering, you might consider lifetime, and so if you have a good procurement spec and you have an incentive scheme that will bring and attract good quality products into your market, then you follow that program sequentially with a mandatory efficiency standard where you phase out the old and inefficient technologies. From the consumer's point of view, from the market's point of view, it can be a softer approach. It's not as impactful in terms of taking away something that they were just buying, because you've incentivized them moving on to the next technology. So that could be a good way to think about them and use them. As I say, the person who asked this question, feel free to follow up, and I'm happy to send you resources on designing incentive programs and so on. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Michael. And here we have another question for Kawther. So here's an overall comment saying that the technological revolution is very fast, and it is necessary to review the energy efficiency classes and find mechanisms for the replacement or recovery of old equipment and the destruction. So if, in your opinion, is there a need to set up recovery centers? Thank you.
To set up, two parts of the question. To set up a new mechanism or a new innovative mechanism to replace the stock, it will be, I think it's important in order to replace the stock, to innovate a little bit and to create a mechanism that can accelerate the replacement of the stock, especially equipment which have an age more than 10 years. And it's important to create like an innovative mechanism, giving them an incentive in order to replace more rapidly the stock, and especially maybe the mechanism can target the low income families. I think it can be very, very for me an instrument that can accelerate the replacement as well. And you have in Tunisia the mechanism ProSol for introducing solar water heater, and I think this mechanism can be adapted as well for refrigerator in order to help the low-income families to replace their less efficient equipment. I agree totally that it's time. When I have presented my, I said that introducing labeling and maps, it's a continuous process. So it's important now to review the label, to review because you know that the technology progress, and I think it's time now to review this categories, and in order to push more the producer and to push more the actors in order to enhance the energy efficiency of the product. So I think it's time. The labeling has to be how to say updated. So it's time to update. I agree totally. And now, especially for Tunisia, we have started earlier. So I think now in Europe they are looking for introducing a new label. I think that Tunisia, as example as Tunisia, can follow up rapidly, and for the other country who in the MENA country who they are not at the moment implemented the labeling, they can benefit from this this progress in order to go faster. So and to transform the market faster. But regarding the last question, I don't understand what he said. The center, I don't understand what did he mean precisely of center. Sorry, Valeria, can you explain more?
Then the attendee made a translation in French.
What's in French?
C'est Centre de récupération.
Yes, for the recuperation. Yes. Especially for if you would like to replace the stock. Yes. It's important to create all the value chain, because when you replace the stock, you need at the same time to create how to make the recuperation of the stock. So yes, it's very, very important to design a center as well for the recuperation, because you have the CFC, you have all the component of refrigerator or another equipment. So I agree totally that if you want to create mechanism, you need to see the whole value chain until making the recuperation at the end of the life of the equipment that you would like to replace. Yes, I agree totally. So it's important to look at this aspect not only from energy perspective but also from environmental perspective. Yes, I agree totally. Yes.
Great, thank you very much. And here our second last question, which is actually open to all the panelists. If you're aware, could maybe elaborate something about policies to control informal markets in relation to energy efficiency appliances? Thank you.
The informal market, it's very, very. I know that in our region there is a lot of problem of the informal market, not regarding all the equipment, but some of them. But it's not a regulated market. So I think the first thing to do is how to introduce this black market to be in a formal market. I think that the problem is more than related to energy efficiency or to MEPS and labeling. It's something which is related to the policy, general policy, to see the taxes introduced in the different appliances, to see how to avoid this black market and how to bring this black market to be more formal. This is because you cannot, the EE instrument policy is for control, for organized market. It's not for black market. So I think the problem is over the responsibility of our EE policy programs. This is my opinion. Maybe the other panelists have another opinion.
Okay, so let me just add a little bit on that. I do believe that if we're having a strict or effective monitoring scheme would help, because black market effect can be very big, but it's hidden. It's something that we cannot find data on. So I think it has to be based on country basis, doing a very strong and strict monitoring over the market. And also I think it goes along with awareness, because as we say, it's implementation along with planning. So it has to do also with awareness of the public about the expenses of non-efficient appliances on the long term. And I think one policy tool that could be useful is doing scrubbing campaigns of non-efficient appliances.
Thank you very much. And here is our last question for Kawther. regarding the energy efficiency class for RCREEE, it has been changed across years from 5 to 4 and then finally to 3. What is the reason behind that, and what are the criteria behind such energy class changes? Thank you very much.
The changes, it's regarding the introducing of the maps. I think the maps, what I have presented is how they introduce the maps for the room air conditioner. And I think the room air conditioner, especially in Tunisia, most of them are imported. So what we said that you can go faster in order to introduce most efficient room air conditioner in the countries. So that's why you go faster than a refrigerator, because the refrigerators are more than 50% are produced in Tunisia. So we take into consideration the fact that the manufacturer has to invest in les moules and in the capacity of productions. However, for room air conditioner, we go faster because most of the room air conditioner in Tunisia are imported. So you said that you can go faster, and I think you can go faster than this because it's time to review this minimum energy performance standard, which has been introduced in 2011, and I think the technology is going faster in order to transform our market as well. So I think that's why for the room air conditioners we choose to go faster than maps in introducing maps in for the refrigerator. And I think it's time to review this at the moment, because you can go better than this and you can transform our market better than this, because the technology offer us new with better EE ratio that you can push the market to be more and more efficient than this, because most of them are imported. Yes.
Great. Thank you very much for all your elaborate and informative answers. And it was very detailed, and we surely learned a lot. So, ladies and gentlemen, finally we have come to the end of the webinar. I would like to give a big thanks to the panelists for their informative and interesting presentations, and to the audience for their active participation. The presentation will be beneficial for all the stakeholders involved in energy efficiency. So I would like to thank you for your attention and wish you a good day or night from sunny Copenhagen. Thank you.